I am Katherine Carter, 58 years old, a former hospital administrator, who now keeps a small bookkeeping consultancy running from my kitchen table. Today, I am standing on the sidewalk in front of the house I paid for in full, the house I painted, furnished, and handed over as a promise of stability to my only son. Two unfamiliar sedans are in the driveway. A young couple signs final papers with a realtor on the porch, smiling with the nervous excitement of people stepping into their first home. Movers carry boxes through the doorway that used to open to my Sundays, my casseroles, my photographs. The door is theirs now. Not Nate's, not Vanessa's, not mine, theirs. Nate climbs out of the SUV first, his phone still glowing in his hand, his face emptied of color as he takes in the scene. Vanessa is 5 steps ahead, voice already sharpened, expensive sunglasses perched like armor. "What is this?" She spits as if she can command the world back into the shape she prefers. Then she sees me. "You can't do this." I do not raise my voice. I do not shake. I hold a thick-tabbed folder against my chest, and when I finally speak, I speak as if I am simply reading back an invoice that is long overdue. My son texted, "You're not coming on the cruise. My wife says it's family only." This was after I paid for their house, so I froze their accounts, reversed the gift, and sold it while they were gone. When they returned, everything was gone. I hand Vanessa the folder. She rips it open, flipping past the first page, then the second, her breathing going shallow, as the legal language hits her in steady waves. Deed reversal, trust formation, asset freeze authorizations, a notarized timeline, a forensic accounting summary with her name typed neatly beside the words, "Secondary authorized user." Nate reaches for the papers, but she jerks them away, scanning for a mistake, a loophole, a mercy I did not leave. Behind us, the newly minted owners laugh at something the realtor says about the morning light in the kitchen. I remember installing the dimmers in that kitchen myself. I remember picking out those soft, close cabinets because Vanessa said they made the room feel more sophisticated. I remember paying the invoice, telling myself, this was love, this was belonging, this was what mothers do. Vanessa looks up at me, fury cracking through her voice. "You can't sell our house. Not your house," I say, "not anymore." Nate finally speaks. "Mom, what did you do?" His voice is paper thin, a boy's voice hiding in a grown man's throat. I keep my eyes on him, not on Vanessa. "I did what you both expected me never to do." I answer. I stopped being useful. I started being careful. The movers haul out a final box labeled patio. The porch light catches on the metal of my locket, the one Richard gave me on our 30th anniversary. The one I kept after he died, the one I touched the night your wife slid a stack of documents under my door and told me to sign whenever I was ready. To make everything easier. Easier for whom, Vanessa? Easier for whom? The young couple waves kind and apologetic before stepping inside. Vanessa flips to the last section of the folder. There is a signature there. Mine. There are stamps, dates, wire confirmations, a clean buyer, a full cash offer. Closing completed 48 hours before your ship docked. The money now lives in a trust. You cannot touch a door you do not even know how to knock on. Vanessa drops her sunglasses to hide her eyes. Nate looks at the movers, then the cars, then me. How he asks, the single syllable collapsing under the weight of everything he never bothered to understand. I breathe in slowly. Let the air settle where panic used to live. How does a woman who signed away access take it all back legally, cleanly, without a fight in the open? I tilt my head toward the folder in Vanessa's hand. "You left a paper trail. I built a wall. When the last box disappears inside and the door closes with a new lock, I step back from the driveway. Vanessa lunges forward, her voice ablade. "You will regret this." I shake my head. I already regret everything that made this necessary. Then I turn the folder light, now my locket warm against my collarbone, and I walk away, while Nate is still whispering my name like he is calling for a mother who is already gone. The pen felt heavier than it should have. In Rebecca Morgan's office, the walls were neat, the air cool, the paper crisp. She slid each document toward me like a surgeon passing instruments across a sterile field. Initial here, here, and here, she said. This one rescinds the durable power you granted. This one retitles the property back to you. This one authorizes the trust. And this one freezes every account to which Vanessa Pierce Carter has even indirect access. Brandon Lee sat at the end of the table, laptop open, cursor, blinking above a button that simply read, freeze. The word looked small, almost polite for something that would change everything. He glanced at me. When you are ready? He did not rush me. No one rushed me anymore. I touched the locket at my throat. Richard had always warned me to keep one hand on the wheel. He died, and I took mine off to let my son's wife steer. That was the day I started drifting toward an ocean I never meant to sail. I pressed the pen down and wrote my name the way my husband always said. It looked like a woman carving herself back into the record. Katherine Carter. The ink bled slightly on the K. Rebecca nodded, efficient and calm. That's the last signature. She stamped the packet, slid it into a large envelope, then looked at Brandon. He looked at me. I looked at the button. Im lang khong phai la yu joy. I said, my voice steady, the Vietnamese phrase, a private echo from a friend who had taught me that line years ago, after losing her own savings to a charming nephew. Silence is not weakness. Im lang la chien luoc. Silence is strategy. Brandon pressed freeze. The screen refreshed. A list of accounts flipped from green to gray. A final dialog box popped up, access revoked. Effective immediately. We moved to the deed reversal. Rebecca explained each clause, each protection, each line that turned my gift into a mistake undone. She used simple language, as if narrating a map out of a forest. Durable power rescinded. Successor trustee assigned. Spendthrift provisions engaged. Every dollar now sheltered under my control and bound by my conditions. No one would sign under my name again. No one would amend what they did not build. When we finished, Rebecca gathered the documents into a second folder, this one labeled contingencies. If they threatened to sue, she said this becomes public record, fraud, elder financial abuse, forgery, coercion. Let them decide how loud they want this to get. She paused, searching my face for fear, for vindictiveness, for something messy she would have to manage. I gave her none of it. What I felt was cleaner, focus, relief, something like air after months of breathing water. Brandon closed his laptop. They are on a ship, he said. They believe you are home and harmless. I nodded. Let them keep believing that for 4 more days. Rebecca smiled a thin line of approval. When they dock, she said their world will already be gone. I lowered my eyes to the table, to the pen, to the thin groove the nib had left in the paper. When I finally looked up, I felt the stillness in my chest settle into something that could hold. I stood, lifted the first folder, then the second. The locket at my throat warmed again under the office lights. I remembered Richard's hand on mine the day we paid off our first mortgage, the day we promised ourselves our son would never have to feel the fear we felt growing up. We kept that promise too well. As I walked out, I told myself another promise. This time it had my name on it. How does a mother who once signed a document that gave her daughter-in-law the keys to her money, her property and her privacy, take it all back legally and cleanly, without a courtroom brawl or a screaming match in a kitchen she paid to remodel? How does she sell the house her son believes is untouchable, while he is sipping a cocktail on a ship, confident that the woman who raised him is too gentle, too tired, too loyal to ever say no? You are looking at the end of the story. The movers, the locks, the stunned faces, the folders tabbed and notarized. But endings are only clean because someone did the work in the dark where no one was watching. I did that work at 2:17 in the morning with a laptop glow on my face and a knot tightening in my throat as I scrolled through transactions labeled home maintenance and emergency repair that I never approved to cards I never owned under a secondary user whose name was not mine. You want to know why Nate stayed silent? Why he let Vanessa place her hand on the lever that moved my life? At minute 40, you will know. You will read the unsent email he wrote, the one where he tried to explain weakness as protection. You want to know why I chose not to drag him into court when I could have held every mistake of his up to the light? At minute 70, you will understand how a boundary can be sharper than revenge, and how mercy can be a contract with conditions harder than any sentence a judge could write. For now, hold on to the picture. A woman in her late 50s, a locket at her throat, a folder in her hand, and a house that no longer belongs to the people who taught her the difference between being needed and being loved. The text that started this was short, almost polite. "You're not coming on the cruise. My wife says it's family only." The reply was single word. "Okay." In that word, I buried an old version of myself and made room for the woman who would do what had to be done. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. And this is how I used it. I was 36 when Richard passed away, leaving me alone with a 12-year-old boy who had his father's quiet eyes and stubborn jaw. The cancer came fast, like a thief breaking down a locked door. One moment we were planning our 25th anniversary trip to Maine. The next, I was standing in a sterile hospital room holding Richard's cold hand, trying to memorize the way he used to smile. After the funeral, when everyone else went back to their routines, I faced the hollow silence of our house. I had to make a promise to myself I would raise Nate into a man his father could be proud of. I worked double shifts at the hospital, then started freelancing as a medical consultant in the evenings. I learned to budget every penny, to stretch each dollar until it squeaked to save and save again, because one day I wanted Nate to feel safe. By the time Nate graduated from college, I had enough saved for a down payment on a decent home. But safety was not enough for me. I wanted to build something permanent, something that would outlast the years of struggle. I found a charming property on Sycamore Street with an old oak tree out front and a kitchen that begged for family dinners. I imagined Nate sitting there with his own children someday, the light falling just right on the countertops. When Nate and Vanessa got married, I told myself this house would be my gift to them, my way of saying, you have a foundation, you have a future. I didn't just pay the down payment, I paid for the entire house, outright, a clean slate with no mortgage. I even hired a crew to repaint the walls and refinish the floors. I picked soft shades of cream and pale blue because Vanessa said those colors made her feel calm. The day they moved in, I stood in the living room holding my favorite photograph, a candid shot of their wedding day. Nate in a navy suit, Vanessa glowing in a lace gown, both of them laughing as someone tossed petals in the air. I placed that photo on the shelf above the fireplace. I thought it would be a reminder to them and to me that everything I had done, every overtime shift, every sleepless night, was worth it. That photo became my motif of hope. I even started calling the house the foundation, like it was more than just bricks and wood. It was a promise. I believed giving them this home would bring us closer. I believed it would make me part of their happiness, part of their family. Looking back, I can see how my desire to give became an invitation to be taken for granted. I was so determined to fill the gaps left by Richard's death that I didn't see the subtle ways Vanessa began to take control. At first, it was small things suggesting I let her handle certain bills, convincing me that digital banking was confusing and she could simplify it. I brushed it off because I wanted to believe she cared. And Nate, my sweet, distracted Nate, never questioned any of it. He assumed his mother was strong, resourceful, and that I would never need protecting. I told myself it was fine, that this was just how modern families worked. But now when I look at that same wedding photo, I no longer see joy. I see my own blind faith. I see how I tied my sense of belonging to that house, how I mistook financial gifts for love. One day I will take that photo down from the shelf. Not because I hate them, but because I have finally learned that my worth is not measured by the roofs I pay for or the kitchens I build. It is measured by the boundaries I set and the respect I demand. ChatGPT said Vanessa had the kind of voice that made people lean in warm and syrupy, as if she were always on the verge of a compliment. She worked in real estate finance and knew how to present herself as helpful without appearing pushy. In the early days of their marriage, she would come over with homemade cookies or insist on tidying my kitchen. She had a way of making me feel like I was still part of their lives, like I was the mother she had always wanted. One Sunday afternoon, as we were sitting in the living room, she leaned toward me with that practiced smile and said, "Mom, I know dealing with taxes and accounts can be stressful. Why don't I help you manage some of it? We can make things simpler, and there are ways to optimize everything so you keep more of your savings." I hesitated at first. I had always managed my own finances. But Vanessa spoke with such confidence, outlining potential tax benefits, telling me how some of my accounts could be streamlined. Nate, sitting beside her, nodded, as if this was all perfectly logical. "She's really good at this, Mom," he said. "She handles all our investments." I told myself it would just be a small arrangement, nothing that would diminish my independence. Vanessa suggested adding her as a secondary contact on a few utility payments, maybe linking her card to cover small household expenses. She phrased it as if she were doing me a favor. The moment that stands out most vividly was the afternoon she brought over a neat stack of papers. "It's just a limited authorization," she said, pointing to the form. "This will let me make quick payments or adjustments if something urgent comes up while you're busy. Think of it as a convenience." I remember holding that pen feeling a flicker of unease, but I pushed it aside. I told myself I was being overly cautious. I signed reassuring myself that it was harmless. Now, when I think back on that moment, I recognize it for what it was: a quiet opening of the gate. I convinced myself it was fine because I trusted them. I wanted to believe Vanessa was trying to protect me to ease my burdens. But deep down, I ignored the whisper that told me I was surrendering something important. That single signature, the one I dismissed as insignificant, would later reveal how easy it is to mistake control for care. The message came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and when I glanced at the screen, I felt my chest tighten. "You're not coming on the cruise. Vanessa wants it to be family only." For a moment, I read the words over and over, thinking I had misunderstood. Family only. As if I were no longer family. As if the woman who raised Nate, who built the very roof over his head, had become an outsider. My thumb hovered above the keyboard, a dozen responses fighting to be typed. I could have demanded an explanation or begged for inclusion. Instead, I typed a single word. "Okay." It was a small, quiet word, but in that moment, I felt something harden inside me. Voiceover. That single "okay" was the period at the end of my years of quiet obedience. It was the moment I decided I would never be dismissed again. I placed the phone down slowly, as though the weight of that text could shatter the surface of the counter. The house around me, with all its memories and photographs, felt colder than usual. I caught my reflection in the glass of the wedding photo I had once cherished, the one I placed above their fireplace. For the first time, I saw not a proud mother, but a woman who had been taken for granted far too long. That night, I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the dining table long after the streetlights had come on. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop. That night, I reopened every account I whispered to myself. My fingers hovered over the login screens with a mix of fear and determination. I knew this was the beginning of something irreversible. Whatever I found, whatever I uncovered, would change everything between us. I clicked into the first account, and the quiet hum of the computer felt like the sound of a fuse being lit. It was 2:17 a.m. when I logged into my primary bank account. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the laptop screen. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I barely noticed as I typed in my credentials. My heart thudded in my chest, not because I expected to find something unusual, but because part of me already knew I would. I scrolled through the list of transactions expecting the usual monthly bills, utilities, groceries, the occasional charity donation. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then, as I went further back, I noticed a pattern that made me pause. There were multiple withdrawals, all small enough to escape my casual attention, but consistent enough to raise alarms. $75 here, labeled home maintenance, $200 there for emergency repair, and another for property services. The dates were spread out, each transaction disguised as something routine, something benign. But I knew I hadn't requested any emergency repairs. The house I bought for Nate and Vanessa was brand new when they moved in with warranty still active. My hands stiffened on the trackpad as I clicked through each line one by one. The deeper I looked, the more it felt like my trust was being documented in reverse. Each home maintenance entry was a reminder of how often I had let them handle things without question. I clicked to view the payment methods linked to my account. That's when I saw it, a secondary authorized user. My stomach clenched as I read the name Vanessa Pierce Carter. The letters stared back at me, smug and unrepentant. My own daughter-in-law had direct access to my accounts. I sat frozen, my pulse racing. I tried to remember when I had agreed to this, when I had handed over the keys to my financial life. It hit me like a bitter echo, the small document she convinced me to sign last year, framed as a convenience. At the time, I told myself it was harmless, a favor to make everyone's life easier. I thought I was helping them. Now that decision looked like the first domino that toppled everything. I clicked into the details of the linked card. The activity showed purchases I never made, designer home decor, high-end kitchen gadgets, and fees for services I didn't recognize. My lips pressed together, and I felt my throat tighten. I whispered into the quiet room, "You've been using me." It wasn't just about the money. It was the betrayal that burned. I had believed I was giving them freedom, and instead, I had become their silent funding source. The clock on my screen blinked 2:31 a.m., but I didn't stop. I moved on to my savings account, my retirement funds, and other linked accounts, combing through every detail. I noticed more small transfers, each cleverly labeled to look innocent. Vanessa's name appeared repeatedly as the secondary approver, a ghost signature threaded through my life. That was the moment something shifted inside me. The Katherine who smiled and excused every slight, who told herself that being needed was the same as being loved, began to disappear. I closed my laptop gently and sat back, staring into the darkness. My mind was no longer foggy. It was sharp focused. I realized I had allowed this because I wanted to avoid conflict. I thought keeping the peace was worth a few compromises. I was wrong. This was no longer about peace. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my independence, my voice. I reached for my phone and opened the Notes app. With steady fingers, I typed, "Tomorrow check all accounts, confirm authorizations, change passwords." I saved the note, then added another line, "Call Gloria." My old friend had been warning me for months about being too trusting. At 2:45 a.m., I sat in the stillness of my kitchen, feeling both betrayed and strangely awakened. Vanessa's name on my account wasn't just a detail, it was a warning bell. And I was done ignoring the sound. I didn't wait until morning. My hands were still trembling when I dialed Gloria's number. It was nearly 3 a.m., but I knew she would pick up. She always did. When her familiar voice answered, calm and steady, I could no longer hold back the frustration that had been building for years. I told her everything, the withdrawals, the false home maintenance charges, the way Vanessa's name was tied to my accounts like an invisible chain. There was a pause on the line, just long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Then Gloria said, with the kind of certainty that cut through my panic, "Kat, she's going to take more. This doesn't stop here. You need a firewall. You need someone who knows exactly how to close every door they've opened." By 7 a.m., Gloria was standing in my kitchen with 2 large coffees and that no-nonsense look I had come to rely on. She was dressed in her usual blazer and jeans, hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Show me," she said simply, placing her purse on the table. I opened my laptop, and within minutes, she was leaning over the screen, scanning through transactions with the sharp eyes of a woman who had spent her entire career protecting people from their own mistakes. "Kat, this isn't just misuse. This is systematic. They've been testing the limits, seeing what they can get away with." I felt the weight of my choices pressing on my chest. I thought I was helping them. My voice cracked, but Gloria cut me off with a gentle firmness. "You've helped enough. Now you need to protect yourself. We're calling Brandon." Brandon Lee was a young financial consultant Gloria had mentored years ago. She always said he had the kind of mind that could find cracks in steel. She called him from my kitchen, and by noon he was standing at my front door, a tall, lean man with sharp eyes and a laptop tucked under his arm. He didn't waste time with small talk. "I've seen this pattern before," he said, pulling up a digital dashboard. "If we don't lock this down, they could drain your accounts or even leverage your property. We'll start with an audit. Every account, every card, every login gets checked." As I watched him type, I felt a flicker of hope. It was strange, almost foreign, after the weeks of feeling powerless. Gloria placed her hand over mine and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "This is the first step, Kat. We'll build your wall and we'll make sure it stands." Brandon worked with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. He sat at my kitchen table, his laptop connected to a portable drive filled with security tools. I watched his fingers fly across the keyboard, every click and keystroke deliberate. He had already flagged a few irregular transfers, small amounts Vanessa had moved around as though she were testing the fence. Then his face tightened, and I knew something was wrong before he spoke. "Kat, you need to see this." He turned the screen toward me. On the dashboard was a file from a private lender recently submitted and marked as pending. The document was a pre-approval request for a second mortgage. My name was on the property title, but Vanessa's name appeared as the primary contact for the loan. "She's using your property as collateral," Brandon said, his tone measured but firm. "If this goes through, they could tie the house to a debt you never agreed to." The blood drained from my face. She can't do that," I stammered. "The house is supposed to be a gift, paid in full, no debt, no risk." Brandon shook his head. "She's already positioned herself as an authorized financial manager on your behalf. The lender doesn't know the difference. If they finalize this, the house could be seized to pay off whatever scheme she's running." I felt a surge of anger mixed with disbelief. How far would Vanessa go? It wasn't enough that she excluded me from their cruise. Now she was gambling with the single biggest gift I had ever given. My mind flashed to Richard's locket sitting by the window. I remembered his warning the year before he died: "Don't ever give anyone the keys to your future." And yet, I had handed those keys to a woman who smiled while plotting behind my back. Brandon's voice cut through my thoughts. "We still have time, but not much. The pre-approval means they're evaluating your credit and the property value right now. If we don't act, the loan could be processed without your knowledge, and they could use your house to cover their debts. You'd only find out when the bills start coming, or worse, when you get a foreclosure notice." My stomach turned. "What do we do?" I asked. Brandon leaned forward. "We start by freezing all lines of access. Every bank account, every online portal, every automatic payment Vanessa has set up under your name gets shut down. Then we contact a real estate attorney to secure the title. We have to act like the house is under siege, because it is." I nodded, feeling the tremor in my hands slowly transform into something sharper resolve. Gloria, who had been quietly listening, added, "Kat, this is exactly why I told you to build a wall. Vanessa's behavior isn't just careless, it's predatory. She knows exactly what she's doing." I looked at both of them and said, "Then we start tonight." Brandon smiled faintly. "Good. Because if we don't by next month, this house might not even have your name on it." His words landed like a hammer. For the first time in years, I felt the fire in my chest. I would not let her take another inch from me. Rebecca Morgan arrived the next morning carrying a leather portfolio and the calm confidence of someone who had handled far worse situations. She was Gloria's trusted legal partner, a real estate and trust attorney with a sharp mind and an unshakable demeanor. The moment she sat down at my dining table, she began asking precise questions: when I had transferred the house title, what documents I had signed, and whether I had ever given written permission for Vanessa to act as a financial representative. Her pen scratched quickly across her legal pad as I answered, feeling a mix of shame and relief. After reviewing everything, Rebecca leaned back in her chair and looked at me squarely. "Katherine, we can fix this, but we need to act fast. First, we reverse the deed transfer. We'll reclaim the property title in your name to prevent any further loans or liens being placed against it." Her tone was firm, but not unkind. Once that's secure, we build an additional layer of protection, an irrevocable trust with a spendthrift clause. That way, neither Vanessa nor anyone else can touch your funds, even if they try to pressure you again. "Spendthrift clause?" I asked, leaning forward. Rebecca nodded. "It's a legal safeguard. It keeps beneficiaries or outside parties from assigning pledging or seizing your assets. It means no one can take advantage of you by manipulating your goodwill. It essentially locks the vault." Brandon, who was seated across from us with his laptop open, added, "This is the strongest wall we can build. It will protect both the house and your savings. Once the trust is in place, Vanessa can't even open a utility account without your explicit consent." I felt a wave of something I hadn't experienced in a long time control. It was like inhaling after holding my breath for years. "How long will it take?" I asked. Rebecca smiled slightly, the kind of smile that promises competence. "If we start today, we can have the deed reversal and trust drafted within 48 hours. But we need every detail: bank accounts, passwords, property records." Gloria reached over and squeezed my hand. "Kat, this is your chance to take everything back. Not just the house, but your peace of mind." I looked at Rebecca and nodded. "Do it. Reverse the house. Build the trust. I don't care how much paperwork it takes. I want my life untouchable." Rebecca flipped to a new page in her portfolio. "Then let's begin. By the time they return from that cruise, the world they thought they controlled will be gone." Her words settled over the room like a quiet vow. For the first time, I believed it. Brandon spent the next day combing through every shred of digital information he could find. I sat beside him, alternating between anger and disbelief, as he uncovered layer after layer of Vanessa's schemes. "She's smarter than most people who try this," he muttered, scrolling through a set of saved email drafts. He clicked one open, and my stomach tightened as I read the words on the screen. "Mrs. Carter is getting older. She often forgets to pay bills or misses important details. I've been managing her finances to make things easier for her. It's in her best interest if I handle everything." I could feel the blood rush to my face. Older forgets things I said, my voice trembling with fury. I wasn't perfect, but I had never once missed a payment or lost track of my accounts. Brandon's jaw tightened. "She's painting a picture, Kat. This draft isn't accidental. She's trying to convince the bank that you're not capable of handling your own money." The worst came when he opened another folder marked Legal Preparations. Inside was a partially completed application for conservatorship legal guardianship over me. "This is serious," Brandon said quietly. "She's planning to go to court and declare you mentally unfit to manage your affairs. If that happens, she could gain full control over your assets. You'd be locked out of your own life." I stared at the screen, unable to move. Conservatorship? It was the same tool people use to protect the elderly from scams, and Vanessa wanted to twist it into a weapon against me. Brandon clicked further into the documents and revealed a scan letter from a doctor I had never met. "This physician claims you show early signs of cognitive decline," he said. "It's dated 2 weeks ago." I grabbed the laptop, reading the letter over and over. The signature belonged to Dr. Alvarez, someone Vanessa claimed was a friend of the family. My hands shook. I remembered Vanessa casually asking me if I had felt a bit more forgetful lately, laughing it off as a joke. I had brushed it aside, thinking she was just making conversation. Now I realized she had been building a narrative piece by piece to make me look incapable. Microspike number 5 hit me like a wave. "She's setting me up," I whispered. "She wants to erase me while I'm still alive." Brandon nodded gravely. "If we don't shut this down now, she'll file these papers and you'll have to fight for every single right you still have. We need solid evidence of what she's doing, and we need to move fast." I called Gloria into the room, my voice shaking but my determination rising. "I'm not going to let her do this," I said. Gloria placed both hands on my shoulders and looked me in the eye. "Then we gather everything, every email, every draft, every shady transfer. We're going to build a case so airtight that she won't even dare file that petition." Brandon began downloading Vanessa's drafts and saving them to an encrypted folder. "I'll pull the metadata too," he said. "We can prove when she created these documents and what devices were used." I sat back, breathing hard. The fear was still there, but beneath it was a growing fire. Vanessa thought she could write me off, reduce me to a fragile, forgetful woman who wouldn't notice her lies. She had no idea who I truly was. Not anymore. That evening, I printed out the most damning emails and placed them in a new binder, labeled Evidence, Carter Trust. Every page I slid into a plastic sleeve felt like a brick added to the wall I was building one she would never climb. The private investigator, a quiet man named Harris with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel, arrived the next day with a slim black folder and a flash drive. He had been digging into Vanessa's communication records and financial activities for less than 48 hours, but what he found made my skin crawl. "There's a recorded call you need to hear," he said, sliding the flash drive across my kitchen table. "It's between Vanessa and a senior representative at Crestline Bank. It confirms everything we suspected and worse." Brandon plugged the drive into his laptop, and a low hiss filled the room before the voices came through. Vanessa's tone was sweet, but calculated, each word dipped in honey, yet sharpened with intent. "We'll make it look like she's too overwhelmed to manage these accounts," she said. My body stiffened at the sound of her voice. "Once the documents are finalized, I'll handle all authorizations on her behalf. She won't object. She never does." I felt my breath catch my chest, tightening as though someone had wrapped ice around my ribs. Hearing her voice like that, so confident, so casual about erasing me, was worse than reading any email. I didn't interrupt the recording. I just stared at the laptop screen, my hands folded tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. The banker's voice was muffled but clear enough. "As long as we have her consent, we can proceed." Vanessa chuckled softly. "Consent? Don't worry about that. I'll have her sign. She trusts me implicitly. We'll make it look like a routine update." My stomach churned. I remembered every time she brought papers to my house wrapped in polite explanations, every smile that hid another step toward control. Gloria watched me closely, her jaw tight. She reached out and gently rested a hand on mine, but I barely felt it. The recording kept playing, each word echoing like a warning bell in a hollow church. If she asked questions, Vanessa continued, "I'll tell her it's for tax benefits or easier management. Older clients don't need to be burdened with details." That word "older" rang in my ears like an insult, as if age erased intelligence, as if my years of hard work and careful planning meant nothing. The recording ended, leaving a silence that felt heavier than sound. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in its black surface. I wasn't angry in the way I thought I would be. I wasn't even crying. Instead, I felt something colder, sharper, a clarity that left no room for doubt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Vanessa wasn't just careless. She was deliberate, calculated. She was betting on my silence, on the fact that I would be too polite or too trusting to fight back. I leaned back in my chair, letting the coldness settle into my bones like armor. Harris cleared his throat. "There's more," he said, holding up the folder. Copies of her loan applications, her emails to financial institutions, and a record of her calls. "But this recording, this is the nail in the coffin." I nodded slowly, my voice low but steady. I needed to hear it. Now I know exactly what she thinks of me. And she's wrong. Brandon closed the laptop, his expression firm. "Kat, this is enough evidence to shut her out completely. We can use this recording to revoke every access point she has. Once the trust is finalized, she won't touch a cent." I glanced at the window where the late afternoon light was pouring through, soft but unrelenting. In that light, I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like someone waking up after years of sleep. Vanessa thought she could make me invisible, but I had just heard the truth. And the truth had given me back my voice. The day after we listened to Vanessa's recorded call, Harris returned with another update. His expression was tense, and I could tell from the way he set his briefcase down that something was off. Kat, he said, we have a complication. It's not about Vanessa directly, but someone close to her circle is trying to meddle. I felt my shoulders stiffen. What do you mean? Harris opened his laptop, revealing a series of messages between Brandon and a banker, someone Harris identified as an old associate of Vanessa's. The messages weren't incriminating, but they were suggestive. A casual offer to make things easier for Brandon if he chose to let certain transactions slide or delay certain reports. Harris leaned back, his voice sharp. I don't think Brandon engaged with them, but I need you to see this. Vanessa might be using her connections to test our team. She's probing for weak points. I glanced at Brandon, who had gone pale. I didn't respond to any of these. He said quickly, his hands raised. I didn't even know this banker was tied to Vanessa. I assumed it was a routine inquiry. Harris gave him a hard look. It wasn't routine. This is a soft bribe. They're fishing for leverage. The tension in the room grew heavier by the second. I studied Brandon, trying to read the truth in his face. He looked genuinely shaken, but doubt crept into my mind. Could I trust him completely? Could I trust anyone I turned to Gloria, whose expression had hardened into steel? What do we do? I asked. Gloria didn't hesitate. We tighten the team. From now on, every single document, every transaction, every decision passes through dual authorization. No exceptions. If Brandon processes something, I sign it. If I process something, Brandon signs it. Harris will monitor both sides. Nobody works alone anymore. Brandon nodded quickly, almost relieved by the structure. I understand, he said. This is bigger than I realized. If they're trying to corrupt someone like me, they'll stop at nothing. I sat back, taking a long breath. The realization hit me that this wasn't just about my money or my house anymore. Vanessa was playing a deeper game, and she was willing to use anyone in her orbit to win. We need to act as if everything we do is under a microscope, I said. Because if she's desperate enough to go after you, Brandon, we can't assume she won't try something worse. Harris closed his laptop and slid a notepad across the table. I'll document every interaction from here on out, he said. If anyone tries to interfere, we'll have a paper trail to bury them. Gloria turned to me and softened her tone slightly. Kat, this is the point where most people would back down. They'd think it's too complicated, too risky. But I know you. You're not going to stop. She was right. Something inside me had shifted. The betrayal had burned away the hesitation that used to hold me back. No, I said quietly but firmly. I'm not stopping. If Vanessa wants a war, she'll see exactly who she's dealing with. From that moment, every step we took was deliberate and documented. I signed papers with a steady hand, watching Gloria countersign each one. Brandon, though shaken, threw himself into the audit with a renewed determination, as if to prove to all of us, and maybe to himself, that he was unshakable. The tension was high, but for the first time I felt our side was united by something stronger than fear. We were building a fortress brick by brick, and Vanessa's games would not break it. Harris arrived later that week with an expression that made my heart sink before he even spoke. He placed a thin envelope on the table and said, Kat, you need to see this. It's from Nate's personal email account. Drafts he never sent. My breath caught as I opened the envelope and unfolded the printed pages. They were fragments of thoughts, half-written confessions, and unsent messages that revealed far more than I wanted to know. One draft began. Mom, Vanessa says you're getting scammed. She found strange charges and said she's been protecting you. I didn't want to upset you, so I let her handle things. Maybe it's better if she keeps control for now. My hands tightened around the page. Protecting me. No. Vanessa had twisted reality, making my own son believe I was too naive to handle my own life. Another draft read, I know Mom will be angry, but I can't let my friend's startup go under. I'll pay it back. Vanessa says this is the only way. I looked up at Harris, my voice shaking. What is this about a startup? Harris glanced at Brandon, who shifted uncomfortably. Kat, this is the hard part. Nate signed a short-term loan using your name. It was supposed to be temporary, but Vanessa framed it as you, agreeing to back him. It's all tied to a venture his friend is running. My stomach dropped. He used my name without even asking me. Brandon nodded grimly. It's called a bridge loan, high interest risky. They needed a guarantor, and Vanessa told Nate it was fine since you never say no. He believed her. He thought it would be harmless as long as the company recovered. I felt my chest tighten, as if someone had reached inside and clenched their fist around my heart. Nate, my son, the boy I raised to be honest and careful, had been convinced that lying was justified if it was for a good cause. Microspike number 6 hit me like a tidal wave. So he let her siphon my money, because he thought she was saving me from scams while he gambled with my name on a loan. Harris's face was grim. Yes, he thinks Vanessa is protecting you. He doesn't see that she's manipulating him as much as she's manipulating you. I leaned back in my chair, my breath shallow. Part of me wanted to scream, but another part colder and sharper just went silent. Vanessa had poisoned the very bond between me and my son, turning his loyalty into a weapon. I stared down at the drafts, reading his clumsy apologies over and over. I just didn't want you to worry, Mom, one line read. Vanessa says this is the smart way to handle things. Gloria, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Kat, this isn't just about money anymore. Vanessa has convinced him that you're incapable. If we don't show him the truth soon, you could lose him completely. I closed my eyes and nodded. I knew she was right. My plan to protect myself now had a new layer. I wasn't just reclaiming my house and accounts. I was fighting to get my son back from the web Vanessa had spun around him. That night, I sat with Richard's locket in my hand, staring at Nate's baby photo on the wall. The boy I raised would never have done this on his own. Vanessa had whispered in his ear, feeding him lies about me. I whispered into the quiet room, I'm going to save you, Nate, even if you hate me for it at first. And I meant it. I sat alone at the dining table that night. Nate's unsent emails spread in front of me like open wounds. The words blurred, but not because I was crying. I had no tears left for this. Instead, I felt a hollow ache that went deeper than anger. A quiet realization that I had played a part in creating this mess. I whispered to myself I taught him this. I taught my son that his mother will always fix everything. From the time Nate was little, I had been the problem solver, the safety net that never broke. When Richard died, I overcompensated. I made sure Nate never felt the sting of failure thinking I was protecting him. I paid for things he should have learned to earn himself. I covered mistakes he should have faced. And now, as a grown man, he believed that responsibility was optional, that someone would always clean up behind him. I made him this way, I admitted quietly. I turned him into a man who doesn't know how to stand on his own feet. The thought hit me harder than Vanessa's betrayal. I could see the pattern clearly now. Nate was not cruel by nature, but he had been molded by years of my quiet sacrifices. I had thought love meant saying yes to everything, paying the bills, buying the house, keeping my mouth shut when his wife made decisions that should never have been hers. I thought I was being generous, but generosity without boundaries becomes something else. It becomes permission to be used. I traced my fingers over the edge of one email draft, his apology half-formed. He didn't even have the courage to send it. Vanessa had convinced him that I was too fragile to know the truth, but the truth was that I had been too willing to stay silent. I had been the one who taught him that silence was easier than confrontation. I leaned back in my chair, my decision forming like iron. This stops now, I said out loud. I will not save him by sacrificing myself anymore. I will protect what's mine first. Only then will I teach him the meaning of responsibility. In that moment, I wasn't just reclaiming my house or my money. I was reclaiming my place as a mother who demanded respect. Nate would have to face the consequences of his choices. And if he wanted to rebuild our relationship, it would be on honest ground, not the quicksand of my endless forgiveness. Rebecca moved with ruthless efficiency once we had everything we needed. Within 24 hours, she filed the official paperwork to reverse the property transfer. "The house will be legally yours again," she said, tapping the documents with a neat trimmed fingernail. Her calm tone belied the storm brewing around us. Every account that had Vanessa's fingerprints on it was frozen. Brandon updated me hourly, ensuring each password was reset and each authorization revoked. Watching the secondary user tags vanish from my accounts was like watching heavy chains drop from my wrists. But Vanessa wasn't about to give up without a fight. Late one evening, as I was reviewing the final trust paperwork, an envelope slid under my front door. The handwriting on the outside was unmistakably hers, curvy, overly perfect, like someone trying to impress a stranger. Inside was a stack of documents labeled routine amendments. My stomach knotted. Rebecca had warned me that Vanessa might try something desperate. I sat at the kitchen table reading line after line. Buried in the fine print was the real trap, a new power of attorney labeled permanent and irrevocable. If I signed, Vanessa would have total control over my finances, property, even medical decisions. It was a quiet attempt at legal erasure. My hands tightened on the paper. She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought I'd blindly trust her the way I had trusted her before. The next morning, I brought the envelope to Rebecca. Her face hardened as she skimmed the pages. "She's bold," Rebecca said, "but she just gave us more evidence of coercion. Do not respond. Do not sign anything. We'll document this attempt as part of the case." Something inside me shifted. I realized I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt focus. Vanessa's little game had only made my resolve stronger. When she returned from her cruise, she'd find not a naive mother-in-law, but a woman who had reclaimed her power brick by brick. 2 days later, we arranged a private meeting at a neutral law office. Vanessa walked in first, her smile perfectly rehearsed, followed by Nate, who looked like he'd been dragged into the room by invisible strings. "We don't want any trouble," Vanessa began sweetly. "Why don't we just share expenses? We can keep everything simple. You're still family, Kat. You'll always be mom to us." I didn't respond. I kept my face calm even when she leaned closer, pretending to show concern. "I know you're tired. We can handle all the boring financial stuff for you. Just let us manage it. It's better for everyone." Instead of answering, I slid a heavy dossier across the table. The cover page was labeled Evidence, Fraudulent Activity. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were copies of every unauthorized transfer, every email draft, and the audio transcript of her conversation with the banker. Her hands shook as she flipped through page after page. She started, but her voice faltered. Nate's face paled as he glanced at the evidence. "Mom, what is this?" he asked, his voice tight. I didn't say a word. Silence was my weapon now. Rebecca, sitting beside me, finally broke the silence. "Mrs. Carter, this dossier represents everything we will file if you push this any further. Fraud, financial abuse, forgery, it's all documented. You can walk away quietly, or we can let the court see it." Vanessa's smile faded like paint in the rain. She closed the folder with trembling fingers. I looked her straight in the eye, still silent until she turned away. In the days that followed, Rebecca and Harris worked together to create what they called a counter timeline, a meticulous record of every instance of Vanessa's manipulation. Each transaction was traced, every suspicious withdrawal highlighted, and every document she had tampered with was cataloged. This timeline doesn't just show fraud. Harris explained it tells a story. A judge won't see scattered data. They'll see a pattern of intent. I spent hours reviewing the documents, reliving every careless favor I had allowed Vanessa to handle. Then one evening, I noticed something tucked into a folder Rebecca had prepared for court exhibits, a photograph from the housewarming party I'd paid for. It was the picture of Nate and Vanessa smiling on their new front porch holding champagne glasses. I had taken that photo myself, beaming with pride. Without thinking, I flipped it face down. That moment, once a symbol of love, now felt like proof of my own blindness. I had believed that buying them a house would keep us close, but all it had done was teach them to see me as a resource, not a person. That single gesture of turning the photo over felt like a quiet declaration. I will not be blinded by nostalgia anymore. Rebecca noticed and said gently, "Sometimes the hardest thing is seeing how much we wanted to believe. But this," she gestured at the thick binder of evidence, "this is what we believe now. The facts." While Vanessa and Nate sipped cocktails on a sunlit cruise deck, thinking their world was secure, the final sale of the house was completed. Rebecca's team handled every legal detail, while Brandon and Harris made sure every wire transfer was protected. When the money landed in my new trust account, untouchable by anyone but me, I felt a weight lift from my chest. The buyers were a couple in their early 60s, Thomas and Eileen. When I met them at the closing, Eileen clasped my hand with tears in her eyes. "We know what it's like," she said softly. "Our own son drained our retirement account last year. This house, it's more than a fresh start for us. It's healing." Her words pierced me with both pain and solidarity. We weren't just signing papers. We were rewriting stories that had been scarred by betrayal. For a brief moment, I felt less alone. Microspike number 8 hit me. Then this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about creating something untouchable, not just for me, but for anyone who had been manipulated by the ones they loved most. As I left the office, I glanced at the keys resting in Thomas's palm. I no longer saw that house as mine nor as Nate's. It was now part of someone else's new chapter. Mine was just beginning. Rebecca called it the insurance package, but I thought of it as my shield. Every document Vanessa had tampered with, every unauthorized withdrawal, every fraudulent signature, Rebecca and Harris compiled it all into one master dossier. It was thick enough to fill a banker's box, meticulously organized and cross-referenced. On the cover was a simple label, "If they sue." We sat around my dining table as Rebecca reviewed the contents with us. "If they even think about launching legal action," she explained, "this becomes public record. Fraud, elder financial abuse, forged documents. We will file everything simultaneously, and there will be no way for them to hide what they've done." Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge of steel beneath it. Harris added, "We've traced every suspicious transaction and tied it to Vanessa's accounts. The recording of her conversation with the banker combined with the unsigned power of attorney she tried to slip under your door will speak louder than any accusation they could throw at you." He slid a USB drive across the table. "This is a digital backup time-stamped, encrypted, and ready to submit to the state if necessary." I flipped through one of the binders, my eyes lingering on the section titled Elder Financial Exploitation. It felt strange seeing my own name listed as the victim of abuse, but the facts were undeniable. Vanessa had tried to dismantle my independence piece by piece. I wasn't just protecting myself now, I was setting a precedent. "If they want to fight," I said, my voice low but steady, "I'll let the truth tear their lies apart." Brandon looked at me with something like admiration. "Kate, if this package goes public, it will ruin them. Their finances, their reputation, even Nate's professional career, it will all come crashing down." I closed the binder gently. "Then maybe that's what it takes. But I won't start the fire. I'll only strike if they push me." Rebecca leaned back, satisfied. "That's exactly the right stance. Let them make the next move. We're ready either way." For the first time, I felt untouchable. Not invincible, but secure. I glanced at the locket around my neck and thought of Richard. He would have wanted me to stand tall to protect not just what we built, but who I had always been, a woman who doesn't break when tested. Now I had the proof and the plan to ensure that Vanessa would never underestimate me again. The driveway scene was almost silent, except for the grinding sound of the movers' dollies as they wheeled the last boxes inside. I stood across the street, folder in hand, watching as Nate and Vanessa's SUV rolled up. The look on their faces when they saw two unfamiliar sedans in their driveway was worth every sleepless night I had endured. Vanessa's jaw dropped first. "What the hell is this?" she shouted, stepping out of the car so fast she nearly tripped over her own sandals. Nate followed, blinking, as though he couldn't process the scene. His eyes darted from the moving van to me, to the couple standing on the porch, Thomas and Eileen, the new owners. Thomas was smiling politely, trying to stay out of the drama, while Eileen looked at me with quiet solidarity, understanding exactly what this moment meant. Vanessa stormed toward me. "What did you do? Where are our things? Who are these people?" she demanded. I didn't raise my voice. I simply held out the first folder. Folder 1. Reversal in sale, I said calmly. "The house is no longer yours. It hasn't been for days." She snatched the folder and flipped it open, her breath growing uneven. "This is illegal. You can't just—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at a printed email inside the folder. I knew exactly which one it was, the one she had accidentally signed and sent to a bank officer, casually admitting, "We'll take full control of her finances soon. She won't even realize it until it's done." Her face went pale. "Where did you get this?" she hissed. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. It was her own words, her own arrogance staring back at her. Nate, confused, leaned over her shoulder to read. His brow furrowed as the realization sank in. Control. Intent. He murmured almost to himself. Vanessa shoved the papers back at me. "This means nothing." "You won't get away with this?" she snapped. But there was a crack in her voice now, a tremor of fear. She knew what that email meant. It wasn't just evidence. It was a confession she had written herself, a rope she had tied around her own neck. I let the silence stretch. Behind us, the movers closed the truck doors, signaling that the last of her so-called home had been relocated. Eileen looked at Vanessa with quiet disdain and said softly, "It's not your house anymore. It's ours." And Vanessa turned back to me, furious. "You think this makes you strong? You think you can just erase us?" I met her glare with a calmness that cut sharper than anger. "I didn't erase you. You did that yourself when you tried to erase me." When Vanessa's anger began to splinter, I brought out the second folder, folder 2, Evidence If You Sue. I placed it on the hood of their SUV, sliding it toward her without a word. She hesitated, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside were the transcripts of her bank calls, the unsigned power of attorney she had slipped under my door, the emails, and the full forensic timeline. Vanessa's breathing grew shallow as she flipped through the pages, her face draining of color with each piece of evidence. You can't take this to court." "It will ruin us," she stammered. I tilted my head. "Then don't give me a reason to." Nate, standing a step behind her, looked as if the ground had given way beneath him. His voice cracked when he said, "Mom, I knew some of this. I knew she was moving money around. But I didn't know it was like this. I was scared." He called me Mom for the first time in months, and the words sliced through me like a bittersweet knife. For a moment, I let the mask drop, speaking directly to the audience in my mind. I am not innocent. I once signed a small power of attorney, thinking it was harmless, thinking I was being generous. I was wrong. My trust allowed this mess to grow. But trust, no matter how naive, doesn't mean surrender. I will not let anyone steal my life, not even my own son's fear. Vanessa dropped the folder onto the hood with a thud. "This doesn't scare me," she lied, her voice shaking. I stepped closer, my gaze unwavering. "It should," I said softly, "because the moment you cross me again, this folder will become public, and the world will see exactly what you've done." Nate's hands were shaking as he whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I just thought she was protecting you." I didn't know how to stop it. I turned to him, my voice firm but not cruel. "Then learn, because I'm done carrying the weight of your choices." The tension broke like glass. Vanessa stepped forward, her face contorted with rage. "You think you've won? You think this makes you some kind of hero? You'll die alone in some apartment and no one will even remember you." I didn't flinch. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Alone is better than being used. I'd rather be alone than spend another day being treated like an ATM with a heartbeat." She recoiled, as if I had slapped her. For a long moment, no one spoke. The sound of the moving trucks pulling away filled the air. I walked past her, my steps slow and steady, and handed Nate the final set of keys that no longer belonged to him. "You gambled with my kindness," I said, my voice low and cutting. "And you lost." Vanessa let out a strangled laugh, more a sound of desperation than amusement. "This isn't over, Kat," she spat. "You can't just cut family out of your life." I paused, turning back just enough to meet her gaze. "Family doesn't drain you dry. Family doesn't forge your name or try to steal your future. Whatever you two have become, it's not family anymore." The quiet in the driveway was suffocating. Nate looked at me, his eyes wet, his voice a whisper. "Mom, can we talk? Just you and me?" I held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "When you're ready to be honest with yourself, Nate." "Not before." As I walked away, I felt no fear, no regret, only relief. Vanessa's voice followed me, shrill and angry, but it sounded far away, like the echo of someone who had already lost. My final thought, steady and certain, was this: they thought silence was weakness. But silence was my strategy, and it worked. I had enough evidence to bury Vanessa in court fraud, forgery, elder financial abuse. Rebecca made it clear that if I pursued a criminal case, Vanessa could lose everything, including her license and freedom. But when I looked at the thick binders stacked on my dining table, I realized I didn't want to spend the next few years tangled in lawsuits and hearings. I wanted to move forward, not stay chained to their mistakes. So instead of pressing criminal charges, I handed all the evidence to the bank and the financial regulatory board that governed Vanessa's professional career. It wasn't an act of mercy. It was strategy. I knew her career meant everything to her. A permanent stain on her record would follow her longer than any jail sentence. Rebecca agreed. "This will end her reign quietly, but effectively," she said. "Clients will drop her once they see what she's capable of." And that's exactly what I wanted the truth to speak for itself. But with Nate, things weren't as simple. He wasn't innocent, yet he wasn't Vanessa. He was my son, my only child, and I had played my part in enabling his weakness. Instead of cutting him off completely, I created something Rebecca called the redemption trust. "He needs to earn his place back," I told her. "And I need to know he's capable of becoming the man his father would have been proud of." The terms were harsh, and I knew people would argue whether I was too generous or too cruel. Nate would receive a small monthly stipend from the trust, just enough for basic needs. He would only gain access to more if he repaid every dollar Vanessa had stolen and completed a decade-long program of financial accountability and therapy. 10 years to rebuild his character, his sense of responsibility, and his understanding of what it truly means to take care of family. When I told Nate, his face was a mix of shame and relief. "You're giving me a chance," he said quietly. But why I looked at him, feeling the weight of all the years I had carried for him. "Because you're still my son. But I will never carry you again. You'll walk on your own feet, or you'll stay where you are." The decision sparked debates among my friends. Gloria said I was being too soft, while others whispered I was cruel to make him jump through hoops. I didn't care. This wasn't about revenge. It was about building something that might outlast the pain. It was about giving Nate one final chance to prove he could stand without leaning on me like a crutch. Whether people saw that as compassion or punishment was their problem, not mine. When the dust settled, I realized my story wasn't unique. Too many people, especially older parents, fall victim to financial abuse from those they love most. It's the betrayal that stings hardest, not the money. So I decided to do something with my experience. I used a portion of the funds from the house sale to establish the Elder Financial Protection Fund, a small foundation dedicated to educating and defending seniors from the traps I had walked into. Rebecca agreed to serve as the legal advisor, while Harris and Gloria helped connect the fund with community groups. "This isn't just about you anymore," Rebecca told me. "This is about making sure no one else gets blindsided by the people they trust most." In my new apartment, I started fresh. The walls were bare at first, the fridge nearly empty, but I didn't mind. There was a strange beauty in the simplicity of it. One afternoon as I unpacked, I found the old housewarming photo, the one of Nate and Vanessa grinning like they had earned something they hadn't. I almost tossed it in the trash. Instead, I placed it face down in a drawer like a chapter I no longer needed to reread. In its place, I taped a single photograph to my refrigerator, an empty fridge from my first night in the apartment. To anyone else, it might look sad. To me, it was freedom captured in a snapshot. Empty, but not burdened. Empty, but entirely mine. A week later, my phone buzzed with a text from Nate. "Mom, I've started paying back every cent. I understand now. I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the screen. For the first time, I didn't rush to reply. Instead, I poured myself a cup of jasmine tea, sat by the window, and watched the children playing in the park across the street. I knew this was just the beginning for him. Redemption wasn't earned with a single apology. It was a road paved with action, responsibility, and time. Maybe someday I would answer him, but not today. To anyone watching my story, I'd say this. If you have aging parents, ask them today who has access to their accounts, who can touch their future. Because silence isn't just dangerous. It's an open invitation for those who see trust as weakness. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee? Or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel. Not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today, wherever you are. We hope you carry this story with you. And remember, sometimes the miracle doesn't knock on your door. It waits quietly until you're ready to open your heart. Silence is not weakness. This time, silence is my answer.